Hello everyone, welcome back. Thank you so much for watching. So today I would like to go over a list that's been putting up some decent results, not quite there with mono black or mono red or soldiers. However, this list is incredibly resilient and it's packing some decent tools to help you climb on the ladder. The reason I want to play it today is because it's been having some nominal success, and on top of that it's just a refreshing change from the mono colored grind. So right now, mono white soldiers, mono black, mono red, mono blue, if you're in best of one, you need that efficiency, so it's understandable why you would want to play those monocolored decks. But you can take a break from that, play something like Grixis or even Selesnya Enchantments here, and you can see good success with that as well. The only downside to these decks is they are slightly less consistent with their mana, obviously, because they're 2 or 3 colors. But really the issue that you run into most is that the deck is just not fast enough. And I don't mean fast enough to win a game, I mean just fast enough to climb the ladder. So especially if you're playing on the Mythic ladder specifically, you have to play decks that are really quick so that you aren't at a lower rank than when you went in to the game, right? So if you play a really long control game, your gains on the ladder are going to be less impressive over time than if you're just playing an aggro deck. So the Mythic ladder does encourage playing aggro decks, and especially best of one, if you can maintain a positive win rate. However, that doesn't mean that you are necessarily constricted to just that playstyle. You can certainly do best of 3, sideboard, play traditional games. If I was preparing for a tournament, that's exactly what I would be playing. But while I'm just trying to grind on the Mythic ladder and have some fun, I'm going to be sticking with my monocolored decks or something like this to change it up a little bit. So let's take a look at the deck itself. We have our 1-drops at Generous Visitor, so this card's quite powerful, of course, being just 1 mana. The downside is that it requires an untapped green source, which in this deck isn't a huge ask. So we have 8 and 9 currently in the mana base, 9 untapped green sources. 3 of those are pain lands, not great into the aggressive decks, obviously, but otherwise the mana base is pretty balanced. We are able to play a Spara's Headquarters. So I have seen some decks that do splash blue like this, mostly in best of 3s. For this purpose of our deck here, though, it's essentially just for a land that produces both green and white that can also cycle. So you have some added versatility there. If you draw it, cycle it away if you don't need it. And then of course, I generally like whatever colors you're playing. I like to play one of each of the legendary lands, so an Iganjo and a Bosiju, respectively. They're essentially forests or plains if you need them to be, so it doesn't hurt to play them, but they have the added upside, of course, of their channel abilities. So being able to destroy artifacts is incredibly strong right now, and other enchantments too. Enchantments especially, so it has some play into even the strangest of decks. Like mono red, you don't expect to be an excellent deck for Besiege, but it turns out it really is. So you can actually use this to destroy their Mishras. If they animate it, you can use it to destroy their mechanized warfare. You can use it to destroy a Kumano. Whatever you have to do, this is actually quite powerful, and at 2 mana, pretty cost efficient as well. So back to our main package here. So in our 2 mana slot, we have some traditional stuff. Circle of Confinement, of course, just your early removal, and it can maybe gain you some life as well. The only card out of all of these, the rest of them are pretty standard. So Forge Ukai Naturalist, it's lifelink. It makes your enchantments cost less. You have the Enchantment Lord here. You can also have some really powerful interactions with removal later on with Weaver of Harmony, or even other things like Restoration, or your other chapter, Michiko. Out of all of these, the Michiko, though, I think is the weakest card. We're only playing 2 of these. Honestly, if you're running into nothing but mono red on the ladder or soldiers, you could play 4 Circle of Confinement. This is okay. It's a little slow because if you play this on turn 2 or 3, oftentimes you do not even get to make use of the +1/+1 ability, and it doesn't have read ahead, so you have to wait until you get this to flip before you get value out of it. However, sometimes against mono red, you can play a Jukai Naturalist and it lives by some miracle, and then turn 3 you can Michiko the Jukai Naturalist and get in for a game-winning attack with lifelink. That can happen. Otherwise, Spirited Companion to draw cards. So we want to, of course, resolve our 3 mana enchantments. We also have Removal in Borrowed Time, which is an enchantment. We have Hallowed Haunting, which is going to create us spirits. And then they're going to get Flying and Vigilance as well. And the spirits are equal to the number, their power and toughness is equal to the number of spirits we control. So they buff themselves, which is very powerful. It's very fairly cheap enchantment as well. And we do have the Catilda too. So the Catilda, honestly, this is whenever I've played through this deck, I win this game not necessarily through Hallowed Haunting most of the time. You do sometimes, but you mostly win this game through just Wedding Announcement and Catilda. The Wedding Announcement is an absurd card. It's a Lord enchantment that also makes you creatures or draws you cards. So the deck overall is pretty resilient. It's very balanced. Once the engine gets going, it's very difficult to stop. Your weakness is if you are running into regular board sweepers, though. So if you're playing against any of the combo decks that play, like, you know, the Portal to Phyrexia and stuff like that, it can be quite difficult to get ahead if they keep wiping your board. Otherwise, though, the deck's very fun. It's also very powerful. Sometimes you can get ran down by mono red. Depending on the build of red they're playing, sometimes they can have too many End the Festivities for you and wipe your board. Sometimes they can just play with fire or lightning strike your Jukai Naturalist, and you just don't have much else after that because you are too slow, because you're casting everything at full price. But sometimes Wedding Announcement can stabilize those games and win it for you. Just depends. So let's go ahead and get into some games with the deck. I hope you enjoy, and hopefully we can actually get some wins today. Be taking it through the best of 1 ladder. 5 matches. We'll see how it performs on the Mythic ladder. Curious to see myself. So I've played this deck a couple of times and it's normally hit or miss. But depending on what you're seeing on the ladder, sometimes you can really take off with it. I've decayed to 93%, unfortunately. Okay, so let's see. We are on the draw. We have a bit of an awkward hand because this comes in tapped. So we can play this tap. We are going to keep this. Maybe we'll draw an untapped land. Okay, so it's not an untapped land. So we have 2 options. We can either cast our Generous Visitor now, hope to draw a land, do nothing on the next turn. Alternatively, we can play one of our Kamis on turn 2. Already a tough decision. I think it's better to go for the turn 2 play, in all honesty. Alright, very possible that we just get Make Disappeared here, which we have backup Kami, not a big deal. Okay, so this is the deck you do not want to play against, obviously, so they're going to have mini board sweepers. However, it's important against them that we resolve things like Wedding Announcement. So, with that being said, I think I want to double spell here. I think the Kami is better, so we'll lead with Generous Visitor, and then we'll play Kami. Maybe this eats a counter spell, so this gets Make Disappeared, or that's not the worst. 3 mana to counter a 2 mana spell. And we have Generous Visitor, which serves a similar purpose. Okay, so I say we cast Spirited Companion, try to find our land. I don't want to commit the Wedding Announcement yet. And we'll get the counter. And untapped land here, we can play Naturalist, but no such luck. That's okay, we'll go for the damage. And our opponent's at 4 cards. It's very powerful. So Union, you get to draw a card, and you gain life equal to the amount of land or cards in your hand. Not as great against us as it is against mono red and things like that, though. Okay, so we did find our land here. My worry is we are going to get Wandering Emperor. The upside of getting Wandering Emperor is that we can play some good spells here. So I say we go for it, and then we can double spell Jukai and Wedding Announcement if they tap out for Wandering Emperor. We lose some, we lose a little bit of steam, obviously, but they're going to exile the Generous Visitor regardless.
The energy of battle, then
okay, they're just making it 2/2. So are they going to block the Generous Visitor? Going to block Spirited Companion. So I could... I don't think I want to take my turn to destroy their 2/2. I think we'll just deal the damage. And now we'll play this. Play Jukai Naturalist, and then we'll play our Wedding Announcement. And we will draw a card. They'll kill their Wandering Emperor to exile the Generous Visitor. It's fine.
My judgment is final.
Okay. So now we have a lot of cards. And obviously the Catilda is our better one. However, it's not that great. Could have played this, got the planes, and then played it. That may have been better. So we can get back our Spirited Companion, discarding one of these Michikos. Our opponent... Let's cast things before... Let's cast things before combat in the event our opponent has another Wandering Emperor. They do have another Wandering Emperor, so now we can resolve...
I am the Emperor of Kamigawa. Let your blade do the talking.
The Catilda. And then we can discard, maybe just discard the planes and get Jukai Naturalist back, maybe.
Fast as a puzzle, and I'm going to much to consider.
Unless we just want cards. At this point, we don't really need, like, mana, right? So let's definitely discard this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We can't cast everything in our hand, technically. Unless we get Jukai Naturalist, although card advantage might just be better at this point. We don't really need lifelink, we already have lifelink. And we find a land anyway. Alright, how close am I to killing them with Michiko here? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I can play everything. So that becomes a 5/5. Are they dead? 5/5, 6/6, and then it gets plus, so 6 plus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 10 plus this 11 plus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 17. I could just 17 my opponent right here. That is an opportunity for a lot of damage. Our opponent. Again, a lot of life. All right, so this is clearly our opponent board wiping us, so we'll block. And we have the disturb.
There is much the past can teach us.
I have got new moves to teach you.
And we hope our opponent doesn't have another board wipe and we win on the following turn. But if not, we get these two creatures, so they'll have to board wipe several turns in a row. Okay. Blue is perfectly fine by me.
Another mystery solved.
Not worried about Bank Buster. And it looks like our opponent's probably dead here. Okay, all right, wonderful. So we get a victory, so I would then disturb the Catilda onto our Kami here. That way we have two lethal threats, an attack. Even if our opponent board wipes us this turn, we still have these two threats that are flipping, so they'd have to board wipe again on the following turn. So that's actually that matchup was a lot more resilient than I thought it would be. I figured our board wipe opponent would just be completely favored, but we were actually able to win there. All right, let's run it back for game number 2. Hope everyone's having a wonderful day. I know it's been good for me. I'm very fortunate. I'm so grateful to have some folks watching my videos as well. I hope you all are getting some good information out of this. Try to make as much no-nonsense arena content as I possibly can to help you on your arena grind, or maybe even some play-ins or some tournaments or something like that. If you ever have a question for me, you can always reach out to me. Leave it in a comment, anything you'd like to do. Okay, so this hand isn't... It's fine. We're on the draw. I think it's good enough to keep. It's kind of slow. So maybe if we found an untapped land to play on turn 2, this would be fine. I think I am going to keep this. If it's mono red, we probably lose. We can stabilize here with an untapped land. That's an untapped land. So we'll lead with our headquarters. Question is, what do we want to play on turn 2? So the naturalist is a good option. So if they don't have removal, the next turn we can Michiko naturalist to stabilize. I guess we can assume that stuff's dying anyway, so I think we just go for the most beneficial option to us, because our turn 2 play is most likely to die to some type of removal spell here. Okay, it's a mechanized warfare, so this actually... So I'm not going to block, but we can actually gain some life here. All right, and now we can actually go ahead and play a couple of creatures. So this will pump our Jukai Naturalist. I guess it doesn't matter. I'll tap that, but... And this might be very difficult for our opponent to come back from. That's the swing that we needed, for sure. Although, they still have a lot of damage. Okay, so... 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Take it, I guess. think I'd rather just develop some stuff onto the board. So if I attack like this, okay, I misplayed. I should have activated my Weaver of Harmonies. Terrible misplay on my part. I'm so sorry. So I should have activated my Weaver of Harmonies on my Michiko. That would have guaranteed me the game. I still think it's fine to get in the attack here. I don't think the game's been thrown by any means, but we would have gained a lot more life, and I think that was a slight misplay. They will get a card here, but I don't want to take that much damage. They get a Kumano. It is what it is. They have a second in the festivities. Just a Feldon. Okay, so we come out with the win there because we got the ideal scenario where they did not have turn 2 removal. I should have activated my Weavers. So in my mind, the play is still fine. I don't think it's the safest. I think it's most optimal to use my Weavers to copy my Michiko twice, and then just massively pump my Jukai Naturalist. So that's going to give me an absurd amount of life that my mono red opponent will never be able to come back from ever. It just gets blocked by the Swift Spear, however, but I still gain like how much, 20 something life. So my thinking on that play, though, if I can justify it, my thinking on that play was that I want to attack as quickly as possible to take advantage of my mono red opponent not having the quickest draw, or at least a draw that could outpace my life gain. So I wanted to attack through the Swift Spear with my 2/3/3s. So that way I get them dead as quickly as possible, and I would have killed them on the following turn. So that was my plan. I think it was slightly worse than just pumping the Jukai Naturalist. I think I'm going to win this game if it goes long, and gaining an absurd amount of life is probably the safest way to win that match. It doesn't leave me open to any weird top decks from my opponent. But okay, we're 2-0. Let's go ahead and move to game 3. So that wasn't the ideal hand to have against mono red, but the combination of Jukai Naturalist and Michiko was quite good there, and them not having turn 2 removal, of course, worked very well. Okay, so here we have a similar type of hand. I think this is one that we keep. Lead with an overgrown farmland. Alright, so our opponent is perhaps on my list of mono black. The Okiba Reckoner Raid is not that great against us, though. It's mostly for mono black. So I want my Jukai Naturalist to live, so I think I might just lead with a Kami here. This is going to die no matter what. The reason I lead with Kami over a Spirited Companion is simply to try to get some additional value in the event they don't have a removal spell. But you could play Spirited Companion there to try to guarantee your 3rd land drop, because our opponent is starting to run away with things here. Okay. And we do not draw land, so we do have to play this, unfortunately. Maybe hit a land here. So ideally, we want to, in one turn, just play Jukai Naturalist and play both of these, but we did not hit our land drops on curve. That's okay. And now at this point, we're in life preservation mode. We're severely behind. So our opponent's curved out pretty well. Game's technically not over yet, but it's extraordinarily close. So here we go, Jukai Naturalist into a Spirited Companion, because we don't have a second green, obviously. Okay, and Borrowed Time actually could get us back into this. Maybe. We'll see what my opponent has. If they have an Invoke Despair, so I have to sack a creature, artifact, take 4, 7, 8, 9 on the draw, 10, 11. Okay, so our opponent has Xaxis 4 lethal there. Mono black is very good. And our draw was a bit slow. We fumbled on lands, but that's okay. We'll go ahead and move on to the next game. All right, game number 4 with a 2-1 record. Okay, so hand is pretty good. We have 2 into 3 into 4. We have lands. We're on the play. The lands are a little awkward, and we don't have any 1-drops, but this is fine. So we will just go ahead and lead with an Overgrown Farmland. Next turn we will Besiege you, and then Overgrown Farmland again. This allows us to play our Spirited Companion and Catilda or Wedding Announcement on curve. Depending on what our opponent plays, we may want to be aggressive and play Catilda. Black-red, probably not playing vampires, but... Okay, so I'm not going to play the Besiege you here then. Alright, may just start ticking up the Wedding Announcement. It's less damage, but our opponent's likely to be packing a fair amount of removal. No attacks. And we'll cast our Hollowed Haunting on curve. Deck is pretty resilient against removal. And now, hopefully, we start drawing some enchantments. Circle of Confinement certainly won't work on this. Iganjo will, though. Okay, I don't really want to Circle of Confinement the Witness. Although that is the mana efficient thing to do. It also makes us a spirit. And the spirits pump our Catilda. Then we can give Catilda Disturb on the following turn, perhaps. Okay. It's not great, but I think I am going to just go ahead and do this. And hopefully our opponent doesn't have any board wipes. Spot removal for Catilda, I really do not care about. And that will flip. It's what I wanted to avoid, but then again, our Catilda survives, so I'm not really too sad. This is another creature, so I think I'll go ahead and get in with the spirit token. And if our opponent didn't have removal for Catilda now, they'd have to, or then last turn they'd have to draw it now. Sure. So creature, let's get rid of our Kami. And okay. Get rid of the Circle of Confinement too, but alright, so that's 3 and 1. Opponent did not have spot removal for the Catilda, so we won on the spot. So again, against the decks that aren't very aggressive, but just kind of lack card strength, you know, like the Rakdos decks, Grixis is much better just because you have better card strength and you have access to counter spells. The Rakdos decks, that one was not particularly aggressive. I didn't see any Blood Tithe Harvesters, which is one of the better cards the deck plays, if our opponent was even playing it. Sometimes they like to get a little too fancy. You see that sometimes on the Mythic ladder, but we'll go ahead and go into our 5th match here. Hopefully we can bring home a 4 and 1 record, which is very respectable. Having a great time playing this deck though. It really is a good, it's a good change of pace from playing, you know, mono black or mono red or something. Okay, so we are on the draw with 2 4-drops, which is not great. However, we do have 1 into 2, and if we draw lands, we can go 3-4 and curve out perfectly. So the fact that we have a 1-drop into a 2-drop, I'm going to keep. We'll need to draw some lands though. So if we draw a single land, we'll be just fine. And of course, I play the wrong land, which I get immediately punished for. So I could play the Jukai Naturalist there and play the Restoration on the following turn, but I am terrified of this thing dying. Although I think I'm kind of forced to play it here. But our opponent's most likely a Portal to Phyrexia deck. So I did accidentally play the Plains first instead of the Forest on a misclick, but not that big of a deal overall. Get our card back, and we draw our land. And so now it's like we're starting the game fresh. Alright, so it actually ends up working out. On the following turn, we'll cast the Restoration to find our plains. Now that we have the plains, I think we just stay on curve. So this gets a counter automatically. I'm so sorry for the misplay on the turn 1, but it's actually worked out for us. I don't think it's, given the board wipe, it did not impact us. In fact, it gave us protected us against the board wipe and gave us the ability to double spell against our opponent. So sometimes mistakes work out. You just have to stay cool and keep on playing. Our opponent's getting into scary territories with mana. Okay. So we have a few options here. I like the idea of borrowed time something here. Alternatively, I can Restoration and Spirited Companion. Let me just do that. It'll give me a fair amount of creatures as well. Okay, so now we're kind of off to the races. I don't want my opponent drawing. I lose some value on the Kami here, but okay. What does our opponent have? All right, and I believe that will be game. Okay, so it was a Portal to Phyrexia deck, which traditionally I don't think we're that great against, but given we had the double, the double enchantment that creates a spirit tokens, we were able to grind through the board wipes. Okay, so I do not believe I played the deck perfectly. I misplayed most certainly a few times that I pointed out, and I'm sure I still made mistakes on other occasions too, but I believe I played with lines in mind that would lead to victories in the game, or at least increase my chances of winning. But was it the perfect line? There's a few times I could certainly see an argument for me not taking the best line whatsoever. However, we were able to get a 4-1 record with this deck. I'm certainly not a master of it. I've piloted it several times in the past, but it has not been my most played deck by any means, which is by far mono black and mono red on the best of one ladder. But regardless, a 4-1 record with Selesnya Enchantments was actually really impressive. I could see this deck performing quite well. Our only loss was to mono black, which you're going to see a fair amount of mono black over time. That matchup felt pretty brutal. Everything else, though, felt like we had a lot of game. Even if we started off not so strong, it felt like we really had a lot of opportunity. So with that being said, I hope you enjoyed the video. I can take a look at the deck to see if maybe there are any changes that I would consider making. Ultimately, you know, I still don't like this card, but you know, it does turn into, it's a 2-mana creature that gets +1/+1 for each enchantment we have, which at the end of the day is fine. And it even got us that game against mono red, pumping our lifelink creature. So what do I know? Maybe the card actually is pretty decent. Hollowed Haunting, of course, came in extraordinarily strong every time we played it. Wedding Announcement felt awesome. If there's anything I would change, I wouldn't mind having a 4th Generous Visitor. Maybe go down on a Borrowed Time or a 4th Generous Visitor. That does take you down on enchantments, but we are a little heavy on 3-drops. We have 5, 9, 10, 11 3-drops. That's pretty heavy in that slot. So we could potentially lower our curve a little bit while increasing the odds of getting a 1-drop if we cut a borrowed time for a generous visitor. So that could be a potential change that you would want to make depending on what you're seeing on the ladder, of course. Otherwise, I don't believe I would change much. I think that this version of the deck is pretty balanced, but maybe you have a couple cards you can slot out here or there. I'd have to put in a lot of reps, you know, dozens of games, maybe hundreds of games on this deck to really determine what cards are your flex slots, but for the most part, I think you should be pretty safe running this list, or maybe going up to a 4th generous visitor. That being said, though, thank you so much for watching. I hope you had a wonderful time and learned something. I know I certainly did. Be sure to check out my other videos. I recently hit rank 1 in Mythic Arena. I have a video outlining the strategies, the deck strategies that I use to get to rank 1. But otherwise, I hope you all have a wonderful day, and thank you so much.